All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a trade breakdown video of the position I took today in Nvidia on the base breakout, discussing my entry, my stop loss, how I'm managing risk, and how I'll manage the position going forward. We'll see if this just stops me out tomorrow, but nevertheless, I'll talk through my full process here, breaking down the trend, the base, and of course, getting into the details of what I was looking for in terms of the entry. My cost is about 182.36, a little bit higher in my margin account. I first placed the order in my Roth, and I'll talk about what I was watching off the open to actually go ahead and enter the position. So let's go ahead and dive right in. First things first, Nvidia, likely you know what they do. It's right at the heart of all the AI data center theme stocks that's going on, and had a very strong trend off the April lows, formed this constructive base, and I've been watching this really since this gap up. We've had a few blips below the moving averages, but overall it's been consolidating, moving up the right hand side, which is exactly where I want to get involved. And this weekend I was focused on semiconductors. A lot of the names on my focus list were semis, including NVMI, KLAC, a few other names. But we got a gap up here on Monday. And for me, gap ups, unless there's really a big catalyst behind it, are kind of an avoid and just wait for another opportunity. But I kind of treated this as a setup day right below this key level, the base pivot. And I was watching for follow through to the upside, pushing towards this base breakout and looking to buy the actual breakout on Nvidia. So that's why I was focused on it today. We had another strong gap, and then again, as I mentioned, looking for fall through and basically a push off the open. That would be my trigger to enter, and that's exactly what happened. Breaking down this base a little bit more in detail, you've got this nice consolidation. We're chopping back and below the moving average. As soon as we get below the 21 EMA here, I'm just kind of saying this is kind of resetting and watching for a reclaim of that 21 EMA to start to move up the right hand side of the base. We got this gap up here and then a leak lower again, and then this bar was interesting. I completely missed this move. This was on the OpenAI partnership news, very strong catalyst, but it went nowhere. So if this broke out and went without me, that's all well and good. I was focused on other names at the time. This happened kind of in the middle of the day. I think it was either around 11 or 12, but regardless, I missed this move. But luckily enough, we pulled back again, showed support at the moving averages, and then that started the most recent move higher and eventual base breakout here. This bar right here was another sign for me to really be focused on Nvidia, especially going into the beginning of this week. And that's because we have a nice sign of demand. We had a gap down and then strong push higher, reclaiming the moving averages. This broke back through this low. This was an oops reversal. And then I really liked this next bar as well. Another undercut and reclaim of the moving averages. Overall, an inside day tightening compared to this bar right here. And so within this little range, within the larger base, we've got now a primed setup that looked ready for a push higher into a potential base breakout. Like I said, we got a gap up, so I was just kind of waiting one more day, and then I actually acted on this day right here, anticipating the breakout from the base. Now, looking at this bar, we did break out and close pretty close to highs, which is constructive. We didn't have huge volume coming in, which is something I'm taking note of. I'm acting based on price action alone, but ideally we see volume really come in, especially if we get follow through the next day, which would be ideal. But we'll have to see what happens next. Again, this could fail the next day and I could be stopped out, and I'll take my loss and move on to the next trade. No big deal. But for now, we're closing near highs, and the expectation is fall through to the upside. I really like here as well. As I noted, this tightening action, RMV is going to zero. That is something I'm always looking for right near moving averages. Up the right-hand side of the base is a tight area, basically ratified by the RMV going to zero, and then looking to enter around that area. And here I got a little bit later because of this gap up and this push higher. One thing I do want to note is that this was a very strong trend off these April lows. This isn't a true high tight flag because this is measuring from this bottom here. But even from this spot here, it was up about 60%. And I liked how overall this base was about 10% deep, measuring all the way to the low. And here, which is kind of the true bottom of the base, it's only about 8%. So even though this might look a little bit wide and loose, relatively, this is very, very tight. And we'll see if Nvidia can, start a new trend just like this, or, maybe this is more of a short-term duration trade, but we'll have to see what happens and play it as we go. And I'll talk about the position management using moving averages at the end after we go into more detail about my entry. So let's dive in here. So let's talk about what I was looking at on this day to actually enter. So like I said, I was watching for a push higher towards the base breakout, looking to anticipate that move. And what I was watching is the 5-minute time frame. And this is the gap up day. It consolidated base into the end of the day. I like that action. Like I said, this kind of is the setup day where you've got a basing period and we're watching for expansion from that basing period. This is the first 5-minute bar, and let's actually go bar by bar here. This initially we tried to push higher, rejected down. I was going to wait one more bar for potential entry, and I like that I was pulling in because that gives you a spot to play the turn. It allows you to manage risk at that low of the day that's created, and that's exactly what happened in the next bar. We have a move lower and then a reclaim of the anchored VWAP and a start of a move higher, and at this point I entered as it reclaimed that level. And my cost, like I said, 132.36 in my Roth, and a little bit higher, I think, in the 50s here in my margin account. My stop was at the low of the day, which is very, very tight. I think within 0.5%. This is the tightest stop I've had for quite some time. It could honestly have been a little bit wider than that. If we take a look at this, to this key low was still less than 1%, which by itself is very, very tight. But looking at this, we had a gap up. It was looking to start to push towards this bay level. It wasn't too far ahead. And what I was thinking in the moment is, winning horses don't back into the starting gate, as, the saying goes, whether that's Dan Zanger or whoever said that. It's 100% true. I wanted this to work. And if it didn't work, I'd be out. And maybe it stops me out the same day. So be it. That's fine. I'll either look for another entry later on another entry tactic, or just move on to another idea. But I was willing to keep it very, very tight, and I was keeping it this tight, and my stop was 181.44. I remember it. It still is this stop. And I was also watching this low, and this is kind of a leak below this range low. So I was kind of putting it at the intraday base low, even though this is the real base low. But hopefully that makes sense. Let me know in the comments if you want a little bit more elaboration there. But basically my stop was the actual low of the day. That's where it is 99% of the time when I'm entering on a range breakout. And I'm entering anticipating the actual breakout into new highs. So moving forward one day, we got to push higher, which is great. We tried to break out. Right now, again, there's nothing to do. I'm in the position. I'm still watching at this point. We stutter a little bit at the pivot here. We pull back. Right now, my cost is being tested a little bit, but again, it's above my stop. I'm willing to accept whatever happens. And then we reclaim strongly. At this point, I want to go. It's pulled back and tested, and we start to push higher. So here, I'm feeling a little bit better, and we're starting to trend above the anchored VWAP. We're above, the base pivot and pushing the highs. Volume is also coming in. More people are adding and putting on positions. And at this point, we'll move forward. It just begins trending above the anchored VWAP and the intraday moving averages. And often we get a strong push in the morning. The strongest ones will just push the entire day. But I've seen enough breakouts that we often get a basing period, and I'm willing to let it work, because I've got my stop in place, and ideally it stays above the anchored VWAP. That's kind of my intraday level to see, is there demand around that level? Is it bouncing off that level? If so, this is a healthy breakout. So moving forward, we start a basing process a little bit. Anchor VWAP starts to flatten out a little bit. More basing, pullback, respects it. So doing nothing wrong so far. Pulls back, undercuts, but reclaims quickly. Another good sign that there's kind of institutional demand and just demand in general for this name here. And we get the close here with a nice strong close, more volume coming in. So again, my entry, this bar right here, 182.36, a little bit higher in my margin account. I do my Roth first. That's just kind of how I do. And I have the orders prepped beforehand, so I'm ready to go. So my stop, again, very, very tight. I probably won't place a stop this tight. Typically they're a little bit more than 1, to 2%. I like doing 1 to 3% is kind of my typical level, but this just happened to be very, very tight because again, it either worked or didn't. And in this case, it worked. And we've got a decent cushion going into the end of the day. This is about 2.4%, if I remember correctly. And we closed well right near highs. And I like to see this respect for the intraday anchored VWAP. So that's my entry, my rationale for doing so. And yeah, how I kind of viewed the day as it went on. After it got to this point, I went out and walked my dog. There's nothing to do. My stop's in place. It either works or it doesn't. And watching the stock isn't going to help move it any higher, even though it might feel good doing so. Often, just a blip down or a pullback to the anchor VWAP might feel like a lot, especially if you're watching your P&L. But, if you're a swing trader whose time frame is days and weeks, and ideally I'll hold this for days and weeks if the trend actually gets going, there's no point in watching intraday action after I've already done my job, executed, managed my risk. Then it's time to go to a daily chart and watch the close and see how it actually closes. If it had, undercut the anchored VWAP, closed very negatively, I would have considered taking it off, especially if it's testing my cost. I wouldn't have taken a loss on this name, but we closed nicely, so that's good to see. So thinking about going forward, I've got my position set. My cost is pretty good. My risk is managed. The 10 EMA is still below my cost here. So what I'm watching for now, ideally, and we'll see what actually happens again, is we push higher tomorrow and follow through and start to push higher and continue a trend just like this. If we reverse down or undercut this key level here, I'll likely take it off and just wait for another opportunity, whether that's a pullback to the base pivot, similar to Hood. Let me bring up this chart here. Hood, we got the breakout and then kind of downside reversal, pullback, upside reversal. So I'd be watching for another setup against that pivot. But for now, with Nvidia, ideally we get just fall through to the upside and the start of a new trend just like that. So again, if we reverse down, I'll be stopped out or take it off, no harm done. But if we continue to push higher and form higher highs and higher lows, constructive flags, reconfirmations, that's the ideal. Once the 10 EMA gets above my cost, I'll shift my stop loss to a close below that moving average. And then once the 21 EMA gets above my cost, I'll be kind of shifting things to 2 closes below that 21 EMA. And ideally, we've already got a decent profit in that case. But what I really like about Nvidia and what makes the position management of this kind of clear cut is that the character of Nvidia when it's trending is that it does primarily trade above the 10 EMA during its strongest moves, and that's what I'm watching for. And it only does kind of blips to the 21 EMA and then recoveries until we actually begin a new base and it kind of rolls over. And this is the character just going back on the chart. When we're in a strong trend, it respects the 10 EMA until it's time to form more of a basing period. Respecting the 10 EMA until we undercut the 21 EMA. Respecting the 10 EMA until we really undercut the 21 EMA and it's more of a basing period. So knowing the character of their stock and kind of what to expect, and this of course fits the profile of a liquid leader. It's going to trade a little bit more uniform, and that's why I was able to size that a little bit higher, and I should actually talk about that. So I sized this 40% in both accounts, which is pretty high, but again I was able to take a very tight stop, so my actual risk in my portfolio isn't that high at all. Even if this stops me out, that's no big deal. And I'll take up to 0.5% risk of my portfolio, and this is actually still well below that. So acting well, and again watching for a trend above the 10 and 21 EMA. I'll feel a little bit better once that 10 EMA gets above my cost, and even better if we continue to make progress and we get that 21 EMA above my cost as well. So again, constructive price action would be strong follow through the next day. That would be ideal, but we might get a setup day or even inside day above the base pivot. If that stays above the base pivot, no big deal. I'll let it work. But from that tightness, if we do get a little bit of a pullback or consolidation right here, I want to see a strong reconfirmation and ideally more volume come in as well, since there wasn't too much on the actual breakout. In terms of the fundamentals, like I said, this is part of the AI data center theme. It's right at the heart of all of that. This, has been dormant for a little bit Other names have kind of had their time, to shine, especially the energy type names. Those names which are a little bit more speculative, I'd say. So if this one can really get going, looking for a strong trend. Still strong earnings and sales growth, revenue growth expected about 50%. So that's pretty good. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens. My entry is done. My risk is managed. Now it's about seeing what the stock can do and sticking with it if it works. And if it doesn't work, taking it off and moving on to the next opportunity. So let me know if you have any questions, if there's anything you'd like me to elaborate on. Drop me a question down below in the comment section. If you have any thoughts of your own on NVIDIA or the setup, any characteristic or concept that you noticed that I didn't discuss, let me know. And just a quick reminder, I'm doing a free webinar this weekend on trading breakouts. And this is more of a true trading the base breakout versus my typical up the right hand side range breakout, simply because it didn't really give us that opportunity. I was watching for it, but we had that gap up that kind of messed up the typical process. But I'll be talking about kind of all variations of trading breakouts this weekend. So that's 100% free. The link is down below in the description. It should be popping up right now as well. And I look forward to seeing you there. And there'll also be a free breakouts model book that comes with it. I'll mark up this chart as well. That will be included, as well as some really recent great names like LEU, Oklo, it should be a great resource. And again, free webinar this weekend, this Saturday, and I look forward to seeing you there. So make sure to register. Everybody who registers will be sent the recording. So I look forward to seeing you guys here on Saturday. So thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a like down below if you did. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I'll see you guys in future videos. And also, this is kind of a new format, more of a trade breakdown. I haven't done too many of these before, but if you guys enjoyed this and found it helpful, give me some feedback down below, and I look forward to hearing what you think. So again, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in future videos. Take care. Bye.